supportive, is that he's been catching all the little copywriting errors within the book.
Oh.
So he's been feeding that to me, and I keep putting up a new PDF file of the book online, so the next person that put the book, it's the most up-to-date version. The book in itself is pretty tight, but he's able to catch these little finite details, which is a big, big, big help. I'd also like to thank two other people that I just got in touch with in June. Thanks to Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, it's absolutely amazing as a self-published independent writer to get in touch with so many people around the world. One is S.J. Wist in Toronto, Canada, who bought the book, loves fantasy, gave me a great review. She loved the book. She was been very, very supportive. I've never even met her, but it's nice to get that feedback from her. So I'd like to thank S.J. Wist. And I'd also like to thank two other people, a guy by the name of Peter Saga, who is the publisher and art director of the online free science fiction magazine called Sci-Fi Freedom. And he asked me to do a short story for him, which I got in. And this was a great opportunity for me because I did the story. It's not sci-fi, it's a different genre called steampunk. It's like a Victorian era story. It takes place in 1899 in Shanghai. So I had a lot of fun, kind of quickly writing the story and getting it in. And he loved it, and he passed it on to a fantastic artist. And working with this artist was a great, great pleasure by the name of Wayne Hogg. And Wayne has worked on the films Fifth Element, the Lord of the Rings films that just came out several years ago, The Fellowship of the Rings, The Two Towers. He worked on these films, worked with Peter Jackson and his team at Weta Workshop in New Zealand. And the nicest guy I ever met. He loved the story, and he did a nice, beautiful oral painting of one of the characters from the short story that's going to be part of this magazine that comes out in September. So it's nice to work with and collaborate with these guys. So I'm very thankful to all of them. And thanks to everyone here for coming. And that's it. So I can open up to any questions if you want. And that's it. Yes.
Did you take martial arts or something?
Yeah, that's a good question. I did. It was on and off. When I did karate when I was very young. And then later, when Star Wars Episode 1 was coming out, I was in college. And remembering my old years, like, oh man, I want to get back into Star Wars and George Lucas. And as an anthropologist, I was studying a Zen temple in Boston. The temple was called Chimgwangsa. It was a Korean Zen Buddhist temple. And they taught martial arts within the temple. They used martial arts to practice the philosophy and ideas of Zen. So I studied it for about 9 months. Outside, from the outside looking in, and then the next 9 months living in the temple and practicing Zen meditation and Zen sword and so forth. So a lot of those aspects are a big chunk of this book as well. So that's a great question. Yeah. Yes, Debbie? Yeah.
How do you know how many books in the series?
Good question.
Oh, yeah.
Good. When I was in Japan, when I finally sat down to kind of flesh this story out, I did a huge outline of over maybe 120 pages of the 6 books. And of the first 20 pages of that outline, it was fleshed out into 600 plus pages that became this. So I have this outline of the 6 books, where the story is going to go. It doesn't mean I'm going to follow the outline literally, but I just started working on the second book. And I pulled out the old outlines, and a lot of the ideas that I had, I said, oh yeah, that's exactly still how I imagined this book to be. And over this past month in July, since I'm off from school, I sat down, wrote about 20 pages, took a step back, thought about it, came back, wrote some more, and now it's very clear what the second book is going to be. And surprisingly, another father-son story is going to enter into that book. So it seems like that's a constant theme that I deal with. So, I fleshed out. I think, and J.K. Rowling did the same. When she had her 7 books for Harry Potter, she kind of fleshed out each book, and then she took the first outline and fleshed out to the first Harry Potter.
So there's definite stop.
Yeah.
Stop and start.
Yeah, it's definitely start and stop. And there's lots of symbolism within it. Symbolically, there's a birth of the character, then there's a death of the character. In the second book, there's definitely a symbolic birth of the protagonist that continues into the next book, and then the symbolic death, and it continues in
Any plans of making a movie?
Oh, well, that's out of my hands. I mean, that would be the absolute dream. And since I was in high school, my dream was that to have this story that had been living with so long, see it on the big screen. And that's not out of my control. Right now, it's just focusing on getting the word of the book out there. So we'll see. Yes.
You start writing when you were living in Japan. That's where you started.
Yes.
Japan?
Yeah. I mean, the idea had been kicking around in my head. Actually, I started to sit down and write the book in Spain. The first time I was in Spain when I was in college. I had my heart broken, so like all this emotional drama came out. So I created this character, and I worked with that character, and then I realized, okay, I don't want to work with this, and so I started working more and more. And then once I got to Japan, I had lots of free time, and there I really sat down and wrote. But it had been 10 years of working on this book before Japan and after Japan, and it was 10 years of really learning how to write well. And the best way I learned from writing well was sharing the story with very, very good friends who were very critical of film and books. And one friend I should also mention, Thomas Lee, was a great kind of editor. He was very, very critical, and sitting and working with him, we would sit and have a coffee and spend hours on each paragraph or chapter. And once I was able to see how he saw things, he became my ideal reader. And so when I write, I see things through his eyes. If I get lazy in a certain scene, he's not going to accept this. This is lazy writing. I really got to work on that. So my writing really developed from working with other writers and friends and getting their feedback of what they liked, what they didn't like, and building from there. So the second book is not going to take 10 years. It's not going to take 10 years. I mean, I started writing this month, and it comes out very, very fast and very clean, as opposed to before. When I look back at my old drafts, I mean, it was horrendous. And now I'm very satisfied with the quality of my writing. And the short story I wrote in July, it's stuff that I'm very, very pleased with.
That was what we thought was more work, that first one.
Yeah,
You said it took 10 years.
Yeah,
to do this.
right. And everyone
I
knows.
was thinking, you 5 more books, 10 more years, 6
Yeah,
more years,
right.
to wait for your last book.
Right.
And I said, no, I hope not.
Yeah. My students say that too.
You may not be around.
Yeah. My students say that too, like, Mr. Composto, you're going to be dead, you're not going to finish it.
Never mind. What about us, the readers? We're not going to be around. What are you talking about?
No, I think I'll have a rough draft of the next book done by next summer. I teach, I have a family, so.
So you've got it down to, first was 10 years, the second was 10 months, the next one will be 10 days,
Yeah.
10 hours, and so on.
Yeah.
Got it.
Sam, you can end the night of what's finale.
Yeah, and the image for the finale, the sixth book, has always been in my head, even before I came up with this story. And it came from a classical piece called Adagio. It's this very, very dramatic piece. You'll recognize it. If you've seen the movie Platoon, they keep adding it. When I first finished the first draft, it was 200 pages. Then I got other ideas from friends, and then moved to 300, 400, 500, 600. And here I had a vast cast of characters that I was very content with, that different people could identify with, and it was a very it was a big learning process. And because of all of that, now my writing style has changed. With the second book, I write a little bit, sit, go back, correct, fix, write a little bit more, sit, correct, go back, fix. And that's probably how I'm going to write. And I don't like it, but now I'm just in that.
That's the other question. Then you talk about you have an editor.
Yes.
It's very tough. I was reading the other day about Harvard. He was one of the American greatest writers. That his editor practically he wrote. I mean, he was really the author of what it was. And finally, he revolted against him because do you agree with everything that he said, or you have some discussions sometimes?
Yeah, the discussions are always constructively critical. So he doesn't tear down. He definitely emphasized these are the great aspects of what you wrote, but these are the things that don't work. So he was very, 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 very positive and great to work with, and it was absolutely great. And he respected the story. He read the first 200 pages of the first rough draft, and he said the story is great. The story arc is perfect. There's nothing that you need to change in terms of the story arc, but there's a lot that you need to do to flesh out and make more real for the reader to accept the story. In terms of someone being really critical and in completely changing it, that was my experience of trying to find a literary agent in New York. I was trying to find agents in New York that would, take me on as a unknown writer. And that was an experience I did not like, because I could tell that they read a little bit and they had their own idea of how the story should be. And it's okay, write it this way and then come back to me and then I'll decide if I take it or not. And I was very adamant, I said, no, this is exactly how I envision it, and I'm not going to compromise that to you. So I kind of closed the door to that. I said, screw these guys. And the great thing now with the internet and so forth and self-publishing is there's lots of great companies that give any type of writer the opportunity to get their work out there. So the company I use is called Lulu, and there's lots of people that are using this. Lots of famous writers are saying, screw the publishing company, screw everyone else. I'm just going to do it on my own and take a bigger chunk of the money for myself. And there's definitely good and bad to that. You go through publishing, you have editors, copy editors, and they really refine the work. I've tried to perfect this as much as possible, but I definitely like the independence of doing it my way. And working with Jan, who's my web designer, and coming up with a vision. And the artist who did this scene, another artist, Tiberius Veras from Romania, he works on movies, Avatar. He worked on Avatar, James Cameron film, and communicating with him and sharing ideas. And he did this beautiful painting of it. And I like engaging artists and web designers and taking it on and really getting out there and promoting it my way. And a lot of writers are doing that. And the great thing about that is, for example, there's a lot of literary work out there that before could not get out there. And right now, for example, I'm getting really interested in the Boxer Rebellion. It took place in China around 1900. And I found on Amazon, a small 80-page independently published book, which is a primary account of a wife and husband that suffered as hostages by the Chinese. No publisher would publish this. But this person said, this is good material. It's a primary source for historians. I'll just put it out there and see who gets it. And I said, this is great.